In this section, we will be learning about the HTTP servers and testing. We will look into the express, routing, how to use the APIs. We will look into SQL connection also using the API, using the connection actually, and get the JSON data. Firstly, let's look into APIs. What is an API? It is an application programming interface. Let's write a piece of code. We will create a SQL connection. We will get the data, like query it, and see what this is all about. Before we start diving into the code, we will be using the SQL module. For that, you can download the SQL module by using npm. Now this is the command to actually install the SQL module. But before that, let's do npm init. Since I haven't done npm init in the new folder, let's do that first. Click enter for all of them. We have done npm init. Now let's download the SQL module. We will need MySQL module to create the connection to the SQL database and to query them. This command, it actually downloads the MySQL module and it saves the version and the dependency in the package.json. Once the process is done, it says notice created a log file as package-log.json. You should commit this file. Now, when we look into the folder where we have actually created the package.json, where we did the npm init, in the node modules, in the package.json file, you can actually see this dependency. Let's have a look at it. When you look at this, the package.json file has MySQL dependency and the version of it. Let's try one more. When we install module, for example Express, we will need Express in it. It automatically stores or saves the Express module, the dependency, in the package.json file. Now let's create the code. Firstly, we will import Express, Morgan, and later on we will use the module MySQL. Let me save this. Now we have imported two modules, the Express and Morgan. First we will use app.use and then we will use app.get. Here what we'll do is we will actually get the request and response from it. This is the callback function, request and response. And inside this what we'll say is we will actually console.log. There you go. Now after this we can actually use the request.response to give the JSON format data. For example, if we have two variables about, for example, user1 and user2 details, and if you want to output that into the browser when you execute the app.js, you can do that by using app.get in the same pattern like I wrote here. Instead of this, let's put users. This will be the table where we actually have it. So for that, we will do this and let's create a variable user1, and inside this, first name Harsha. In order to do this, we need to actually have the table user in our database. In the next section, we will be learning actually the SQL table, what is SQL, how to store the data in SQL, and how to create connection and get data using the queries in detail. But for now, let's just look at the request and response. Once this is done, we can actually return the user1 data from the table. All we need to do is use the response.json and in brackets user1. Now let's actually import the module MySQL. After importing the module MySQL, we'll create a connection and then we will write some query. MySQL has a method which is create connection to actually create the connection, and the parameters it takes is the JSON formatted data, the host, user, the database which we are using, and probably the table and all. The first one will be the host, which generally we will be having localhost. All you're using localhost. User, the username, by default it will be root, and the database name which you actually give. Now the thing you need to remember is here we are actually creating SQL connection and then storing and retrieving data from the database. So in order to do that, we obviously need the SQL DB up and running. But for now, this is how we can actually create APIs. For example, in this I can write a query. After creating the connection, I'll write a query like connection.query, and inside this I will give some query like this: select star from so and so table where so and so. Now this particular module, what it does is it actually queries through the database and gives the data. If at all we are getting the data like select, then it gives the data. Like if you're updating or inserting the data, it updates the data. This whole thing we can keep it in API. So what we can do is we can use this module as an API in another application which actually wants to query or update or manipulate the data from our database.